Okay. Welcome to everybody from my beautiful audience who's tuning in again to my podcast, Sacred Activism for Peacemaking and Ending Violence. The times are we so much need inspiration and hope through these times of chaos and turmoil, not just in the United States, my home country, but also in what is going on all around the world and how choices and decisions and actions being made by our current U.S. president is impacting the entire world. So you may have noticed, those of you who've tuned in to season 2, that I started with Marianne Weston, psychic and intuitive political cultural tarot reader, a lovely person. And I am here in my second episode, very excited to also continue the theme of political, cultural, intuitive tarot readings, my colleague Erika Robinson. So she is brilliant. And let me tell you a little bit about her. Erika is the author of The Language of Lenormand, and I'm reading this a little bit so that I don't forget to say the all-important things because you need to know about her. She's also the creator of Erika's Lenormand of Hope. And for those of you who do not know, Lenormand is a card deck that I gather, and maybe Erika can tell us a little bit more about it, Erika, that was developed many, many, many years ago. It's a European sort of French deck, I believe. But what she and her colleague Erika Peebus did was designed a new and beautiful deck called Erika's Lenormand of Hope. And I'm just going to flash the cards in front of you here because they are so gorgeous. And they also feature African American faces, which I think is just lovely. Erika uses her deck in divination about politics, culture, and social issues. Her Substack channel is another place where she uses both the Lenormand deck and another deck. I think she called it an African oracle, I think, but she'll make clear to me, but to you, what it is. She does further readings, then you can read the readings in writing. She has a YouTube channel, The Company of Cards, and she reaches an international audience of around 4K viewers, and I'm assuming and hoping that this is going to mount as more people discover her brilliance and her insight. She discusses many of the issues of the day, and I adore her spirit, her style, and her pragmatism. And her predictions are often very right on. So, as a lifelong anti-racism activist and educator, I also love her commentary on an education of her audience about, and I'm going to put in brackets here, particularly her white audience, about the challenges and issues facing people of color. Although that is but one part of a wide range of issues, social, political, and cultural issues she covers. So with this, I'm going to hand things over to you, Erika, to tell us how you got interested in Lenormand, your spiritual journey, and then we can launch from there into what I anticipate will be a lively exchange, but mostly listening to you share your wisdom of how to navigate grief, about your gift of mediumship, with the cards and on divination in general, and then we can also talk about how you feel you may fit into the rubric of a sacred activist for peacemaking and ending violence. So take it away, dive in.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here. Marianne has become a good friend of mine. She was very kind to invite me on her show, and it's wonderful to have reached her audience and to talk with her about these important things. So Lenormand, yes. So I started out as a tarotist, but I started out as none of that. I'm fairly new in this work, to the extent that I've been in it about maybe 15, 16 years now. And I started out because I was married and became a widow suddenly. And the week before my husband died, we were, I mean, nobody was thinking about dying. It wasn't in the plan, but he had a pair of socks on that I had knitted for him. And he's looking at his socks and he said, "Oh, I love these socks, Erika. When I die, bury me in these socks."
Oh,
And I
wow.
said, "I can't bury you in those socks. You love those socks so much that you've worn a hole in them. How embarrassing." And we started to laugh. And then I don't know what happened, but I got very serious and I said, "Listen, whoever goes first has to let the other one know if there really is something, after." And I thought he would laugh or at least smile, but he didn't. And we were across the room from each other, and he reached out his hand and he stuck his pinky out like a child. And I didn't know. I thought, well, I know what that is. I was a child once too. And I went over and we locked pinkies. We pinky swore. That was it. We went on and had a nice dinner and watched a movie and went to bed, and that was it. Well, a week later, he was dead. So I went right from the hospital to the knitting store, and I found the softest, prettiest, dark gray wool I could find. And then I went to my mother-in-law's house, which is where everybody was coming to give their condolences. And so I started to knit. And so people would come in and they say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss." And I'd say, "Oh, yeah, thank you." And I keep knitting. And they say, "Well, what are you knitting, dear?" And I said, "Socks." And they said, "Oh, well, who are they for?" And I said, "My husband." And I could see out of the corner of my eye, they would look at each other like, does she know? Like, does she get that he's not here anymore? But
Yeah.
I ignored them and I just knitted, knitted, knitted into the night. The next morning, I took them to the funeral home, and he was able to wear handmade socks that I made in
Wow.
the coffin. So I thought, you know what? At least I did that. I'm happy that he said, "Bury me in these socks," and I did him one better. And I didn't think anything of it. A couple of weeks later, we have the funeral and the whole thing. A couple of weeks later, I was, of course, devastated, shocked. I had a 15-year-old daughter. I had a house with 2 mortgages on it. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to send her to college? How am I going to pay for this house? How am I going to this? How am I going to that? How am I going to the other?
Yeah.
A friend of mine said, "You need to go to this yoga class." I said, "What?" She goes, "Just go to the yoga class." I said, "All right." I went to the yoga class. All right, it was just a class. So I saw her the next day. She said, "Did anything happen?" I'm like, "What was supposed to happen?" "Oh," she said, "you weren't open. You need to go back." I looked at her like she was crazy, but I went back the next week to the class. At the end of the class, the teacher came over and whispered in my ear, "Can I see you afterwards?" So I said, well, I didn't know she was a medium. I had no idea I didn't know anything about anything.
Mhm.
So she said, "Did you just recently lose your husband?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, he was in the back of the room the whole time, toasting you with a glass of wine." So that's
Oh,
what I laughed. I was like, right, okay. And
right.
then I said, "Well, what did he look like?" She described him. She described him.
Wow.
But I still didn't believe it. So I said, "Well, was it red wine or white wine?" And she said, "White." I said, "Yeah, no, it wasn't him. He liked red." And I left. And I
Ah.
thought, what a crock. What is she talking about?
Oh, wow.
The grocery store. I lived in a small town, went to the grocery store, came out, and there was a liquor store next door.
Mhm.
And the owner said, "Oh, Mrs. Robinson, I'm so sorry about your loss." I said, "Thank you." He said, "Could you come in here for a minute?" And I thought, "Oh, what?" I go in and he said, "Your husband ordered this case of wine for you and it just came in." And I thought, oh, I know what that is. I had read a book before he died, a couple of weeks before. And I said, "Oh my God, this is the best book." I said, "It's about this woman and she's a yogi and she went to Nepal and on the bus, up these winding roads, the bus had an accident and she broke her back and then healed herself with yoga and then went mountain climbing. And then at the summit of the mountain, her friends met her and they had this great bottle of wine." I said, "Now I do have a bad back." But the rest of that has not, I mean, I will never be climbing a mountain in Nepal. I don't want to be in a bus accident, but I would like to see what wine that was because she named the wine. And he had said to me, "Oh, I'll go look for it." So he went out and he was gone for a while and he came back and he had wine. I said, "You found it?" He goes, "No, they didn't have it. I got you something else." I said, "Okay." And I forgot all about it. But why was he holding the glass up of white wine in the yoga class? It was to tell me, "Erika, go pick up the wine. Go pick up the wine." That just little things like I needed the deed to the house. Well, I didn't know where the deed to the house was. So I said, okay, his name, and I said, "You have to help me find this." And then, like an automaton, I suddenly had a vision of a pile of papers in a study, went into the room, and I reached into the pile, plucked the paper out. It was the deed to the house.
Oh my God.
So I
Wow.
thought, okay, this is crazy. Okay, so I started to read tarot, and I love tarot. I think tarot is beautiful. I do use it in my Substack. I use tarot and will tell me the subject that I'm going to write about. Lenormand tells me what I'm going to say about it. And then the Adinkra, which is this African oracle, kind of sums it up in an aphoristic kind of a way. So I read tarot very well. But I was in a car with two tarot reader friends, and one had something in her hand, and she went to give it to I was riding shotgun. She went to give it to our friend in the back, but it never made it to the back. And what it was a deck of cards, and it was a Lenormand deck. I said, "What is that?" She goes, "I don't know, but I thought so and so in the back seat might like it." Well, never got to the back seat. It was Ciro Marchetti's Gilded Reverie Lenormand. Beautiful, beautiful deck. And I thought, wait a minute, let me take it. First of all, it's only 36 cards. It's not 78 like tarot, 36 cards. There was a very little written about how to read this oracle. It's a German/French oracle.
Okay.
Named for Madame de Lenormand. Madame de Lenormand, who's a French seer, a diviner. She never used Lenormand. She was the diviner for Napoleon. And it was so this Lenormand began as a card game, but then these two guys, we don't even know what their names are, said, "You know what? We should market this. Let's stick Madame Lenormand's name on it because everyone knows that she was this great seer, and we can market it, and people will buy it because her name is on it." That's how it came to be this divining tool, you know. So anyway, I started. I there were very few. There was one resource in English. There were resources in French, and I could read those. And I memorized everything that I needed to memorize to learn the system. And I remember having the big spread out on my bed, and that was a big thing. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm using the whole bed." I felt, when you're a widow, you're like, "Wait, I can roll around onto the other side," but it feels like you shouldn't because
Yeah.
that's fine. Well, anyway, I had the all of the cards out, all 36, and I was looking at them, and they were just swimming in front of my eyes. It just was confusing. And then I heard a voice. Now, you should know I'm deaf in my right ear, have been since I was an infant. I heard a voice in my right ear, and the voice was my husband's. So I said to myself, "Wait a minute, what?" And the voice said, "Erika, it's not childbirth." And I thought, I just heard that in my deaf ear, and it was my husband. Not to mention, what does he know about childbirth? But he said it's not childbirth. What does that even mean? And I thought, well, all right, let's back up. What is childbirth? In my experience, it is hard work. It is bearing down and it's hard work. And there is some amount of memorization, obviously, that you need to do if you're going to read any kind of divination system. Well, I had done that. I had done the childbirth part. He said to me, "It's not childbirth." So what did that mean? Oh, if childbirth is bearing down, I thought, the opposite, which is what he says I now needed to do, was letting go. As soon as I got that message, the tableau that I had with all the became crystal clear, and I became a reader whose accuracy is shockingly high.
Yep.
shockingly high. In fact, I don't think I've ever had a client say to me, that was wrong. Or they might say that was wrong, and then they'll come back a day later and say, that was not wrong. It was right.
Mhm.
So, so I'm a conduit. That's what I am. I'm an oracle. Here's what I believe. I believe that there are two kinds of time. Chronos, time on the clock, time on the watch, time on the calendar. It's the time human beings live by, right? And Kairos, Kairos, Kairos. It's a Greek word.
Sure.
Kairos means the fullness of time. The analogy I always give is if when I was a little girl, if I asked a question and it was above my pay grade, my mother would say, "You'll know in the fullness of time." And I knew that that meant not today and not tomorrow. Maybe when you're a lady, Erika, you'll know, but not yet.
Yeah.
So what happens when I read cards, when any of us read cards, is someone will come to you and make a tacit agreement. What is the agreement? Well, we are human beings and we live according to the clock, the watch, the calendar. But we are souls having a human experience is what we are.
Mhm.
And we all have a higher self, as you know. The higher self understands what physics tells us, which is that the past, the present, and the future all happen at the same time.
Mhm.
As a human being, you're like mind blown. Like, what are you talking about? That makes no sense. We understand the past and the present, but what do you mean? The future is happening. It's all happening at the same time. But physics tells us this is so. So as a reader, what I do is someone will contract with me to access their higher self because their higher self is the part of them that is, for lack of a better word, God. And God sees the past, the present, and the future, as does our higher self.
Mhm.
So what I do is they'll give me a question, just an area of their life. That's all I need. I don't need too much. I don't want too much information because then they'll say, "Well, I told you that." So I don't want. Just give me the area of your life you'd like me to look at, and then I think of it as walking up to the land of Kairos and finding the right vault for the right person and
Mhm.
using the key that that person gave me to open the vault and pull out that information and then bring it down back to the land of Kronos and put out the cards. And the cards are the language that link Kairos and Kronos. And it's pictorial.
Yeah.
So what I can do is I can show my reader through the cards, I show them the story, the narrative that I'm told. Now,
Mhm.
I devised a spread because I said to myself, how can I make this system mine? So a classic spread in Lenormand is 5 cards across.
Right.
And I thought, I want to do a riff on the 5 card spread. So I pull 5 cards and then I pull 3 clarifiers for each of
Right.
those 5 cards. So now we have 20 cards. Then I pull a final 3 cards as a postscript. Now, the first 2 lines give me information that already happened. And so I'll tell my client, well, blah, blah, blah. But, it's sort of the backstory of the issue that they're asking me about.
Excuse me.
And they'll say, how do you know? And I'll say, your higher self told me this. Or they'll say, well, I already know that. That makes me laugh. And I'm like, I'm sure you did. Did I? Until I pulled the cards. So I
Right.
give them those 2 first lines and it shows them, it helps them have buy-in. They realize, oh my God, she went into the right vault. She's pulled
Right.
down the right story. And then
Right.
read the narrative, 2 lines of what has happened, what's going on right now,
Sure.
lines of what's coming in, and then the 3 card postscript at the end. It's a beautiful, beautiful lyrical spread. But my point in writing the book was to make the case that Lenormand is just quintessentially friendly in terms of being an oracle that anyone can use. How do I know? Because it's a word-based oracle. In other words, we all learned when we were little, we learned our ABCs, and we might have learned to sing the alphabet song. And when we learned that whole alphabet song, our moms and dads would probably applaud.
Right.
And then we were led on the little secret, which is there's more to just the alphabet song. There's a reason why we learn the alphabet song. If you take those discrete letters and you put them in different order, you can make words that represent things. Well, this is revelatory if you're a first grader and you're learning how to read, right? Everybody learn how to read. But the good part about Lenormand is we can skip the letter part. We all thought we could read back in the olden days before we even could read because we had picture books. And you could read the picture in this that told you the story.
Right.
That's what Lenormand is. You're reading pictures. So each Lenormand card, while they may be beautiful, is in and of itself, think of it as just a word. And a word has no meaning unless you attach it to what? Other words.
Right.
So
I'm just holding up a couple here. So
Lenormand is very much a team activity where the cards like to dance together with each other. Each card has multiple meanings. So how do you know what a card means? Like you had that bear card right there.
yeah.
The bear is the card for the mother. Isn't that nice? Card for the mother. But it's also the card for your boss. But it's also the card for food. It's also the card for diet issues, food, weight issues. It's also the card for the narcissist. How do you know which it is?
Right.
Until you see what cards are around it and then draw those conclusions and use your intuition. So it's just a beautiful oracle. And you can learn to read it like See Spot Run, the way we all learned Dick and Jane. Or you can learn to read it like Shakespeare or like Toni Morrison. And how do you read, how do you take your reading from one stage to the next? Practice. Mm-hmm. So what I do on YouTube is I had a birthday. It wasn't a big one, but I had a birthday at the end of July, and I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to put up a YouTube channel.
Oh.
And I this was an act of courage. First of all,
so this was last year.
Yeah, it's only a year old, and good. I have almost 33,000 subscribers.
I know.
It's huge.
Impressive.
So I thought, I thought I was camera shy. I found out that I wasn't. And then I thought, I hate my voice because it's kind of, gravelly. Mm-hmm. Well, turns out people love my voice. They say it's very calming, which is crazy. And I thought, well, what are you going to do on this channel? And I thought, well, I'm going to use Lenormand, but use Lenormand how? And I started it during, in the summer, and we were, the election cycle was just starting up and things were really fraught and we didn't know. And I thought, well, I can ask these cards anything. I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. I'm going to show people how Lenormand works. Mm-hmm. And each time I'm reading it, it's kind of a little bit like a tutorial. And they'll learn by osmosis. It's like me flinging them into the land of Lenormand, and I'm speaking Lenormand instead of English, and just by osmosis, they're going to pick it up. And then I'm going to show them how it operates in a real lived context. And in this case, it'll be the political context, the social context, the racial context, mm-hmm. because Lenormand can speak to any human issue that we have concerns about. So that's what I do. And what's beautiful is that people come because they want to hear the prognostications a lot of times, right? They want to hear what's the forecast. But the reason that they stay and the reason that the channel grows is that they see how accessible an oracle this is. So for example, if I say, I'm going to talk about X, people really quick pull their own cards and see what they get. Or they'll listen to me and they'll see what I have pulled and they'll try to come up with what they think it is
Uh-huh.
before I actually say. So they're learning the system. And my goal is this. I was many years ago, I thought I was going to be an Episcopal priest.
Hmm.
I went to divinity school, have the degree to prove it. Master's degree. 3 years it took me to get that master's. But there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump if you want to be an ordained priest in the Episcopal Church. One of the hoops was that I had to go and meet with the bishop. I had a lovely bishop. He was quite old, and he was a poet. He was just a beautiful, beautiful man. And in the middle of my ordination process, he ended up retiring. So I get another bishop. All right, I meet with him, and he tells me I have to meet with this committee. I go meet with the committee. Every question that they asked me, this was in Boston in the 80s. Every question that they asked me was racial in nature, like
Oh,
things like, how good a priest could you be to me, a white woman? And I'm like,
no.
guess about as good a priest as you, a white woman, would allow me to be to you. Like, what do you, what? Well, anyway, I thought I acquitted myself well. I answered the questions. I thought I was graceful. And then I had to go back to the bishop,
Hmm.
and he said, well, here's what the committee found. There is no question but that we need you as a priest in this church. So I'm thinking, good, another hurdle jumped. He said, the question is, do we want you? Are we ready for you? Come
Oh,
back in 2 years. And in that moment, I said, you know what? I won't be back.
yeah.
And that was it. So and you know what? It was a blessing in disguise. I think that all religion is great in terms of being again, a language to express the numinous. But I don't think that any language, I mean, any religion has cornered the market on getting it right. I think the closest that comes is Buddhism, and Buddhism is not a religion,
Right.
philosophy, right? So for me, what I want to show people is that there is nothing that separates you from the love of God. There is nothing that separates you from your own God God self. We come here and we're separated from source, and we come here to learn lessons and have lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, I believe. And the object of the game is to return to source, which is nothing but pure, unadulterated love. And we all get there unless we choose not to. God doesn't turn away from us, we turn away from God.
Mhm.
But beyond that, everyone returns where we come from. And I just want people to know you don't need to come to someone like me or go to a priest for absolution or you have the tools by virtue of being born.
Mm.
That's it. By virtue of being born into the world, you have a right to a relationship, direct relationship with spirit. And the cards are just an intermediary device that is not caught up in ego or anything else because it's just paint on cardboard. Um, and I love that it's paint on cardboard because it's an earthly thing, right? Paint comes from the earth and flowers and all of that, right? Cardboard comes from trees. We're given these elemental tools to access the numinous, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
that's what I want to show people. I think that's why the channel has grown so exponentially.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I get it. I would say, oh, well, firstly, I love that idea about, it being like the paint and the cardboard. I hadn't even thought about that. Um, but I have a burning question, which is, does your husband still speak to you?
I don't need him to. I
Yeah.
think that here's what I think. I think of the soul as fractal in nature,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that it can be many places at once. He could very well be reincarnated for all I know.
Sure.
But fractally, because the soul is fractal, if I ever need him,
Sure.
he's there. I I could tell you all kinds of stories. I mean, he is always there and accessible. I'm also aware, though, that he has his own lessons, his own path, his own journey. But again, because we're human beings, and so our minds can only compute
Right.
in sort of these three-dimensional ways. But the soul is fractal. He can be about his work and he can be with me in an instant. When people die, they're not gone. They just are outside of their physical form.
Right.
And because you're outside of your physical form, you are now limitless. So you're not bounded by the same conventions that we as human beings are, where, you have to be in the same room or you have to be on a screen to believe that I'm really real or hear my voice or something like that.
Sure.
Spirit is not bound by that, I don't think. And so um, if I need him, he's there. I know he is delighted. I wrote about that experience of him saying it's not childbirth in the book because I wanted to sort of memorialize that. It was such it's not. It was just 3 words, but
Right.
it opened up the floodgates for me in terms of what divination can do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one of the things that I would say too that I love about your work and your YouTube channel uh, um, is you always start with kind of your summation of things going on in the world, right?
Mhm.
And it's like you're a political commentator, a political cultural commentator. We're used to maybe going to the talking heads, of MSNBC or Fox or whatever. Um, and, to me, it's like you and Marianne are brilliant um, analysts, interpreters of what is going on in the world. And, you bring so much deep and rich also, historical information forward, right?
Well,
And
I
to,
think that it's important for people to know that, and I say this a lot, is that um, I have a particular bent. I am left as opposed to right,
yeah,
blue or progressive as opposed to red. Everybody's welcome because, why not?
sure.
But I differentiate always my opinion from what the cards tell me.
Yeah,
And my viewers will know that there will be occasions where I will say, well, this is what I want to have happen, or this is what I think should happen, or this is what I think is going to happen. And then I'll pull cards and I'm like, oh, but that's not what's going to happen.
right. Yeah, that just sucks, right?
Well, no, I know because I am a human being who has an ego and has opinions. But when I read, what I say in the book is, I pretend that my ego is a child and I put it in the back seat with a juice box and an iPad because it is not needed for this work. I don't want it kicking the back of my seat. I don't want to hear its
Yeah.
voice. No, this is just me in spirit. I also tell the story of when I first started to work in a shop. I got invited to work in a shop that was pretty famous on the East Coast when I lived there. And I said, well, do you want to audition me or anything? They said, no, we've heard about your work, so just come. So I said, okay. So I go in and I get there about maybe 15 minutes before they were going to open the doors. There were other readers there as well, but they were all there like an hour ahead of time. And I
Oh,
thought, uh-oh, like what is and then I'm listening at the door and I can hear them. They're praying. They're setting out their tables with the crystals and the this and that. I said, oh my God. All I have is a black linen napkin, because I like to
right.
read Blackfield, and a deck of cards. Boom, that's it. So I said, what's going to happen if my very first client comes in and says, ask me something, and I look at the cards and I have to look at them and say, I don't know, beats the hell out of me. What do you see? And I burst out laughing because I knew that would never happen. Why? I didn't need all the accoutrement.
Right.
All I needed was my cards and spirit and my ego to stay in the back seat.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I do make clear on the videos. These are the issues that I'm going to talk about. And if I feel the urge, I'll tell them what I think, but I like to give a backstory so that people know what the issues are. People a lot of times will ask me questions about politics, for example, in other nations. I always do my due diligence, do my research. And then once we're clear on what the topic is and the issues are, then I go to the cards. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would be one of those people, doing the rattling and the praying and laying out, stones and crystals. But that being said, I mean,
and I have crystals. I have a crystal ball.
Right yeah.
I have a candle lit. I do that. But you know what I think? I think people sometimes get confused. For example, with tarot, I've heard tarot readers say, "Oh, my cards don't like it when people ask that question," or "My cards don't like it when you ask the question over and over again." And I'm like, "Your cards don't like it? Who's the what? Who's the boss here?" What I found about Lenormand that I loved is that I could ask the same question over and over and over again. And Lenormand would give me the answer in different iterations of cards. And why is this good? Let's say that you have a problem and you ask your mom for advice and she gives you advice, but you're like, yeah, but that's my mom. So you ask your older sister and she gives you advice and it's the same advice, but she used different words. And you're like, well, I really admire her, but she's my older sister. So what does she know?
Right.
You go to your best friend and they might tell you the same thing. And you're like, oh. Sometimes we can get information from a movie we watch or a piece of music that we listen to or a painting that we look at. So Lenormand says, oh, okay, I told you your answer, but you didn't understand. It's okay. It's all right. I'm going to show you with different cards and say, wait, that's the same thing. And it is the same thing. Do you understand now? And so I would ask in the beginning things like, am I going to be able to pay for my daughter's college? Am I going to be able to keep the house? Am I ever going to fall in love again? Am I going to It was my 3 a.m. friend that everybody wishes that they had and everybody wants to be. But if somebody really does call you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you say, this damn well better be an emergency because it's the right. Deck is always there and always patient and always kind, but very clear. And if the answer is meant to be the answer, it's not going to deviate from that. It's not going to be wishy-washy, give you what you want, if you are reading it the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and of course, setting aside that, as you say, putting your ego in the back seat. I mean, that's, that does take some practice, right?
Practice, absolutely.
And I just to go back, and by the way, I'm yawning not because you are boring. I'm yawning because it is my witching hour. Afternoon, where I have this like yawning thing. So I'm very sorry. I've been trying not to.
No problem. That's okay.
Okay. But, I just was telling, in terms of that thing about putting your ego in the back, and you were saying something about like, it's the cards, it's me, it's spirit. I was just explaining to a student of mine today that, people do all kinds of things I call it shifting your perceptual state. Right. And like I said to her, like, you watch a tarot reader and, they're talking, right? They're talking to you and, whatever. Or in your case, you're going to look deeply into what's going on with some kind of issue at hand in the world today. And, they're doing this. They're playing with their cards. And what they're really doing is they're using that very kind of, very non-cognitive, to begin to shift what I call your perceptual state, which means basically to shift from overt, ego-centered, to more intuitive, to tuning in, right? And then you're like, also, I think, so you can tell me if this is right or not, you're also like, you have this relationship with these cards because you've used them over and over and over again, and it's kind of like you're getting into harmony with the cards. Something
I think
like that. Or is that
for me, it's harmony with spirit.
Harmony with spirit, yeah.
The cards
Through
are
the cards.
a tool. I mean,
They're a tool.
Francis just died, so here's my Catholic reference that I came upon, of course, back when I was in divinity school. But there's a Saint Teresa of Avila.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a prayer and 5 words. And I remembered this prayer when I was a new mother, and I would be doing dishes with the baby strapped to my chest, and just running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And I was a teacher, and I'm a busy life. And I would say, as I was cleaning a toilet or cooking or whatever, I would say this prayer of Saint Teresa of Avila, and the prayer was, "My every act a prayer."
Ah.
Essentially, she's talking about Buddhist mindfulness, that in every moment you want to be mindful. And it's true, when you're reading cards, you are entered into a state. So for example, if I come into a cold room and I begin reading cards, I have to rip off whatever sweater I've got. I'm hot because the energy is
sure.
Right. But I think that it's a practice to be mindful about everything that you do. And that way, for me, and it is for me a practice, so that when I come to the cards, I can be on a subway in New York City and have a seat between me and whoever and read cards, a park bench, a restaurant, anywhere, because I can enter into that state in an instant, because my every act is a prayer. 2 minutes ago, I was eating. That was prayerful. I was grateful for the food.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And 2 minutes later, somebody's asked me for a reading, and I am completely present for that. But I will say I learned another trick. So when I first started to read at this shop, we would do half-hour readings, but we also did 10-minute readings. And when we had the 10-minute ones, you would have people lined up out the door and around the block and around the corner. And so it was energy changing every 10 minutes, person after person after person. So the first few times, I remember I came home at one point and I just opened my door, closed the door, went to my stairs, couldn't even get up to the bedroom, and just sat down on the stairs and cried. And I said, you know what? I want to help people. I love this work. I'm meant to do this work. If I wasn't meant to be a priest in the Episcopal Church, I'm a healer in this way. But I cannot carry everybody's everything. Please give me this gift. Well, the gift that I asked for was that I take St. Teresa's prayer with me when I am reading for someone. So when I'm reading for someone, I am 100% there with them.
Yeah.
Completely. The minute they walk out the door, if they turned around and walked back in, I'd be like, who is that?
Right, exactly. I know that phenomenon.
I asked to have things taken away from me so that I wouldn't have to carry all the troubles of the world.
Yeah, you have to do it that way. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's also like I experience it as like a Pavlovian response almost. It's like you get sort of used to, you sit in that space and boom, you're there, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and it becomes just, in a way, unconscious, you know.
It does. And, people, who was it? Malcolm Gladwell, I guess, who wrote a book saying that you can become an expert at anything if you put in 10,000 hours. I think that was his formula.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, and I'm not going to say that 10,000 is the magic number. He would, but I'm not saying that. But the principle is the same. I think that anyone could do this level of work if they put in the time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I am I'm no paragon. I'm no saint. I'm just somebody who was really interested in the fact that this could be a healing tool, that it was for me, and
Right.
and I could maybe extend it to other people.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of people will send me notes and things, and they'll say, um, this seems to be, because it's only 36 cards and it's, pictures of archetypal objects, much easier than tarot. I'd like to learn how to do this so that I can quit my full-time job and read for people full-time. And I'm like, wait, what? Let me tell you something. When I first started this work, I didn't even know people got paid to do this kind of thing.
Oh, right.
So for years, you know what I would do? I would race home from my teaching job. My daughter by this time was in college. I would race home from my teaching job at 4 o'clock. I would make a pot of coffee and I would fire up my computer and I would go on to these forums that are international. And I would say, I will answer 10 questions.
Oh,
Or
wow.
someone from India would say something like, what does he think of her? Now, my ego wants to say, can you give me a little more detail than that? Who's he? Who's her? What are we talking about here?
Right.
Who's this father, daughter, brother, sister, romantic, blah, blah. But I say, Erika, the ego is in the back seat. You don't need to know all that. You do
Right.
not need to know. Spirit knows. So all you need to do is pull the cards. So I would pull the cards, and for whatever reason, I didn't do it on my computer. I did it on my phone. And with my thumbs, I would compose these long narrative responses.
Wow.
So after maybe a week or two, I would get responses back, people saying, oh my God, that was incredible. And then I would say, okay, so today I'll offer 10 readings, and 100 requests would come in. Then thousands of requests would come in. Then what would happen is, and I'm not, nobody's paying me for this. I'm just doing this to help, and also to see all of the different iterations that these cards can address. An iteration of question these cards can address. So it was a learning thing for me.
Yeah.
But I was helping other people. And then what happened was, because people want to know, how did you get famous for this work? So what I didn't know is that for as many people as would ask me questions, there are tons of other people who are lurkers. They're just watching your work. And some of the people who are watching my work were the greats of the industry, of the divination, card divination world.
Oh, wow.
Sending me little messages, like DMs, saying, you're amazing. This is incredible. Keep it up. And I'd be like, oh my God, I just heard. Like, I would fangirl. I would think that was so cool. But the point was, I did this for years, never getting paid. When I first started to read, I was a teacher, and I thought, oh, I have all these other teachers that I can ask, you want me to read your cards? And they would come the other way. Well, then they started to realize that I was good. I would have to hide in the bathroom sometimes during my lunch hour. And they would bang on the door, are you going to read cards during the...
Oh, God.
So my point
I'm
is...
off duty.
My point is that if anything you do, like, okay, I went to Harvard, and my first semester, we're all freshmen, and we took our first set of exams, and I had classmates saying, what did you get? And I was like, what did I get? I said, let me ask you a question before we worry about what I got. Are you happy with what you got? I'm not asking you what you got. I'm asking you, are you happy with what you got?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're happy with what you got, good. Well, don't worry about what I got. Because the whole time I was at Harvard, I didn't care about my grades. They were good. They were A's.
Yeah.
Why were they good? Because I was immersed in what I was doing, in the work. The work should always be primary. And everything, if the work is primary, every good gift will flow from that. So at Harvard, it translated to grades, right? In this work, it translated to, 33,000 YouTube viewers in 9 months. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
And clients that there's so many that I can't even keep up with. But it's not because I said, "Oh God, please give me clients so that I can, this can be my full-time gig." I never thought of this was as a gig. It was a way to help people, an
Right.
interesting, novel way to help people and to show people that they can help themselves using the same tool.
Yeah. Well, you're a fantastic teacher, I can tell. But I actually want to, and that's all great. I mean, I'm learning from
Mm.
you. So thank you. Um, but I want to kind of shift, a little bit into the sacred activism for peacemaking theme of the podcast. And of course, and actually what you're saying about being a healer and wanting to be of help, of service, right? And and it's a good segue into this
Mhm.
because you are doing one-on-one individual readings where people are bringing their personal questions, issues, things in them that they want to heal to the table. Um, and, I just love the theme, like you can do this too, you can learn this too, which is great because ultimately we want to cut loose our clients and our students into their empowerment, right? But then, here you are with your YouTube channel and your Substack channel, and you're digging down deep into this collective experience, right? And just to be clear and to remind my viewers that sacred activism to me means that we accept the fact that in the in this incarnate physical world we live in, absolutely we have to bring economic, socio-political, um, psychological, medical tools to the table, in order to support and help and facilitate change. But that we also, those of us who maybe have had that awakening into a more spiritual view of life, such as what you share about your awareness and consciousness that there is spirit, right? And
Mhm.
that we can do that practice to put the ego aside and go into a stream where we're tapping into a greater vibrational frequency, right? And that when we do things like reading cards, or in my case, doing energy healings, um, or even just bring, like the way you would do you do your your prayer, right? um, your Teresa d'Avalon prayer, that is an act of sacredness. And then when we bring that sacredness into our efforts to help the world or support others, and particularly in this very critical time, that, as I say, the Caro medicine people of the Andes, who are among my teachers, say this is the time of Pachacuti, the time of the great change,
Mhm.
which is a time,
Pluto in Aquarius.
huh?
Pluto in Aquarius.
Pluto and Aquarius,
Yeah.
right? And so, I'd be interested to hear more about, something about, yeah, doing, how do you see yourself as fitting under, even loosely, that idea of being a sacred activist, like you're active in the world.
Say yes, and so on a lot of different levels.
Sure.
So I think that the most current level, and I don't know that I anticipated this happening on my channel, but it has. I do a lot of work around race. I
Sure.
mean, because I think it is the great national wound. I
Yep.
think when we talk about shadow work, people do a lot of talking about shadow work. And to me, the biggest shadow work that the nation has to do is around race. How do I know it's shadow work? Because nobody wants to do it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, there it is.
so I have noticed I have my viewership is gratifyingly diverse
Mhm.
in terms of race, gender, age, and I think that initially people saw me as very approachable,
Mhm.
kind, friendly. My voice, they say, is ASMR, which I find hysterical. Um, but I talk about hard things. And it's what I try to do in my writing. I try to talk in beautiful ways about hard things. So I make talking about those issues an act of a sacred act. But one of the things that I actually did a Substack on quite recently, I told the story of when I was a little girl, maybe a fourth grade, we learned about the Holocaust.
Mhm.
And my name is Erica with a K, and my maiden name was Hageman,
Yeah,
Hageman, German name.
sure. Yeah.
So as we were hearing about the Holocaust and seeing the pictures and learn, I remember my eyes filling up with tears, and I sank down into my seat and
Mm.
just sobbed. And what I wrote about was the fact that I had this German name. There were other girls in my class who had German names, and they were white. I had this German name, but I was black. So why am I sinking down in my seat? I didn't do
Yeah.
anything. None of my relatives were Nazis. My father's family came over here decades before Hitler was doing his thing. So what's that all about? But in the fourth grade, I had this awakening about the collective consciousness, I'm going to call it. I don't want to even say unconscious, consciousness. And so it felt like an epigenetic memory. And
Yeah.
I knew in that moment that I was as much Jew in oven as I was Nazi that put them there, because we all are. All of us have been
Yeah.
everything at some time in one or another of our very, very, very many lives.
Yeah.
So, so also, my father's white and my mother's black. I desegregated a school when I was small, when I was
Wow.
9.
Yeah.
And, but I look a certain way. My skin is light. I speak in English a certain way that people, white people, tend to make certain assumptions about me.
Mhm.
Uh, and so then they get surprised when maybe they hear my politics, which is pretty, you know, again, very left of center. And so the way that I look at it is that I am planted as a black person in this country. My birth certificate says Negro on it. So there you go.
Right.
The world sees me as black, right? On the other hand, there is this liminalness to me
Mhm.
that if I wanted to, I could be annoyed about. I could say, don't see me as both. I'm black, and I am. That is the place that I stand. But because of my very existence, there is a liminality to
Yeah.
my very personhood, which makes me feel responsible for the other. And when I say the other, racism is not a black problem, it's a white problem.
Mhm.
It's a white problem of the soul. It is a
Yeah.
corruption of the soul.
Yeah.
So I said in my piece, my Substack piece, you might wonder, why do I do this old timey 60s style James Baldwin protest literature? That's how my Substack a lot of times will come across. It's because I know people can do better if
Yeah.
they just wake up, if they choose to wake up and stay awake.
Yeah.
And so like I say, I talk about reading my work. People love my Substack, but it's a very different genre to write than it is to speak.
Mhm.
Because speaking to an audience on a screen can feel to an audience more confrontational. So I'll
Uh-huh.
have people will say things like, well, why didn't you tell everybody this is a black channel? I thought it was for everybody. And my response is, um, it's a Black channel insofar as I am Black, and,
Right.
and I'm speaking from a Black perspective.
Yeah.
It's simultaneously for everyone who has ears to hear. Yes, if
Hmm.
that's what you want to hear, or I'll have people unsubscribe after they've said something really, not nice. I mean, and I've learned that that's what you call a troll. I don't engage with trolls because YouTube gives you this beautiful button where you can just boop. And
Right.
I call it bibbity bobbity boo from Cinderella. Bibbity bobbity
Oh
boo. I
yeah, I
just
love the way you do that.
and the thing is that I could engage, except that they don't want to grow. They
Yeah.
want to. It's an attack. And so now the thing about Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo is that they can still watch the work. They're not prohibited from watching what I do. They can even comment, but nobody sees it. So it's kind of like being in a dimension of hell in a little bit, in a way. It's sort of like you're you're in a vacuum, you know.
Right.
But you chose to be there. And the beautiful part about this vacuum is you are not cut off because you can still listen if that's what you choose to do.
Yeah.
It's just that I don't need to know about it. But I think that this work, I have a lot of women who are older women in my demographic, white women, who will say, I never thought about things this way. I
Mhm.
didn't realize this. I didn't know. And
Yeah.
it really moves me because the thing is, the culture rewards, especially white women, rewards white women for not knowing,
Right. For ignorance. Yeah.
for ignorance,
Yeah.
and also for weakness. Being thin, for example, or
Hmm.
wearing clothes that inhibit your movement, right? High heels or short skirt. You're inhibit. I mean, these are all meant to, you think, make you look attractive, but attractive to whom and why? Because you look powerless. White tears, which are frequent, I have been the recipient of the weaponization of white tears often, but I feel like epigenetically, I have as much white blood as I do black. And so therefore, I have an obligation to try, to
Hmm.
try. And sometimes I'm over it and I'll take a day off or I'll,
Yeah.
talk to my partner about it or whatever. But I just feel like it's my sacred obligation being born into this particular body,
Yeah.
do this work, and therefore it is sacred work. I have just found a sacred means of doing the work, which I think is great. I mean, I always would talk about this stuff. My whole life I've talked about it and been political and all of that. But in these later years, I'm 68 now. So in these later years, to have found this particular way of doing this sacred work sacredly
Yeah.
is a gift, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's really well put. I think, yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking of asking you, you answered a question I was thinking of asking you about, what you feel your role is as an African American woman in terms of this kind of,
That is yeah, I think that is
culture healing, culture, you
my
know,
mother said to me once when I was young, and at the time I thought, oh, what a thing to say. I didn't say anything, but I thought, what a thing to say. In the fullness of time, I get it. She said, I want you to know the pain of being Black.
mm,
Now, I would have thought she would have said, I want you to know the joy of being Black. And
right.
I did. She taught me that. But she wanted me to know the pain of it. Well, why? Because of my color, because of the lightness of my skin.
Uh,
She wanted me to understand that it gave me privilege. And because it gives me privilege, it gives me responsibility, duty, obligation to go and do and be places where those who are darker than me can't go and say the things that I can say, I'll be in a group, not so much with when my hair is locked, but my hair's always been either really short or locked. But people don't really maybe pay attention to the hair. It's the way I look and the way that I talk. And I've been in white spaces and they will say things like that are racist, and they'll say, well, not you. Like, we don't mean you. Like, oh, you're. And I have to check people. And I do. So what I try to do is what I've always said, and I didn't make this line up, so I don't want to, take credit for it. I don't know who said it, but this is my life's work, is to comfort the afflicted, meaning give my Black brothers and sisters some rest and resting space to not have to be the ones to explain anything to anybody, to just be it. And then also to afflict the comfortable. That's my job, to comfort the afflicted.
Great, to afflict the comfortable. Yeah.
That's my job. Now, is it always fun? No. In fact, it's frequently unfun. But it's my obligation. It's like a mantle that I feel was given to me at birth. And I know, because I have grown into it after 68 years, or all during those 68 years, I went with some degree of comfort and some degree of style. And I wouldn't know what to do if I took it off. I don't want to take it off because it's here. It's sewn into the fabric of who I am, and I'm happy. So that's my sacred work, and that's why that's my sacred work.
Yeah, and that is sacred activism, essentially, right? And to me, peacemaking doesn't mean that we go airy-fairy and like spiritually bypass the shadow stuff. We have to go deep into it, I had a very similar experience when I was like 5 or 6, watching the numbers of dead and wounded on the news every night. Raised in that, and I just, I had this moment of just understanding all the pain and the suffering, of the people and the animals and all the killing and all the pain. And I said to my dad, like, why are we killing each other? Like, why? And, because I don't even remember what he said, probably because he was like, oh, what is a father going to say, right? About what is ostensibly a really complicated, horrible situation, right? Other than like, I don't know. But what I do remember saying is, well, why can't we just give the opposite side a check so that you have money, so they'll stop, right? Mm-hmm. But I understand that, how it's woven into the fabric of your being, right?
Yes, it is.
And for me, it has always been like, the just understanding that oppression, right, that war brings on people. Now, back then when I was 4, as a white girl, I wasn't aware of the like, the Asian white, America, the white, essential, the white privilege that was behind all of that. I mean,
you remember I remember this part, that they categorized the dead and the wounded. So they would.
Did they?
Yes, they would say this many enemy, this many South Vietnamese, this many Americans, and it was considered a good day when it was more of them.
Oh yeah, of course, I do remember that. Yeah,
they have the count. Yeah, and I was like, oh my God,
yeah, bad. But so I think that, I'm really, really grateful for the work that you do. And, another thing I was sort of thinking about this idea of like, white people saying, oh, I didn't realize this was a Black channel, right? And, having moved in New Age metaphysical circles for, most of my adult life, but particularly in the 20 years since I've been doing what I'm doing now, it's like and I'm going to add the caveat that, well, particularly now, because we all know that our computers are spying on us and our phones are spying on us. So that means that certain things are getting dropped into the feed, right? Your YouTube feed, your Instagram, Facebook. But, it has been a very white dominated field, and which has always bothered me.
Well,
Um,
wait a minute. Not that Black people do not
oh,
engage
no, I
in
agree.
activities, right? It's
Right.
that, well, it's like Malcolm and Martin would say 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning is the most segregated hour in America,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Of course. No. So I'm not, yes. And yet, and so the thing is that, to me, I'm really hungry for the diversity and hearing the diverse voices, like I'm hungry for it
Mhm.
because I see it as being enriching.
Well, we are
And
entering a different kind of a space, though, sadly, with
yes,
the fact that, okay, this is going to sound blunt, but
you can be blunt to me.
well, I'm always blunt. Believe me, to everyone. I just like to give them a little heads up.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that these diverse voices have been raised always and listened to in what I call a performative way.
Hmm.
So, what has happened now that we had this election and it went the way that it went, you have this big movement of Black people saying,
Yeah.
I'm going to mind my business and mind my Black business and drink my water. And
Sure.
it sounds like they're checked out. They're not checked out. A lot of it is strategic. For example, these big demonstrations would not be nearly as peaceful as they've been, and had such a celebratory, carnival festival air if we had been in the mix. There would have been violence and
Yeah.
blood, and
Oh, yeah.
that's part of why we're saying, no, you all can take over. But in terms of being hungry for this diversity, I think the Black perspective, and I think I can speak for many of us, is um, you. Is this another Lucy in the football situation? Because you said that in the '60s, and then you said that in George Floyd, that when George Floyd got lynched with a knee on his neck, you said
Sure.
that. And then when when the voices or what we were saying was, a little too close for comfort, a little too much, then all of a sudden you don't want to hear it anymore.
Sure.
So our stance, I feel like, and again, I separate myself a little bit because I'm this liminal person. So I will always be a missionary to the unevolved, we'll call it. But I think that generally speaking, the theory is you all can figure it out on your own. We're not going to lend ourselves, our experiences, our stories, our voices, because we've done that and we've done that and we've done that. And the listening, the performative listening has been elevated to an art form.
Hmm.
Uh, and yet, I'll give you an example. When George Floyd was killed, I can't tell you the number of people, white people in my circle, a circle meaning people that I had known in my life, who
Yeah.
were sending me snail mail, email, texts, DMs, people I hadn't heard from in decades, just wanting to connect and touch base and essentially, bottom line, let me know that they were a good person who was horrified by what happened.
Sure.
So at first I would respond, and then I thought, and at first I thought, oh, this is great. You know, maybe this is a question of martyrdom, and he was martyred, and this will be the result that people will wake up. But then I said to myself, Erika, you're so cute. That's not what's going to happen. This is a phase. And
Hmm.
what will happen is, after a while, people will get tired of it. And not only tired of it, resentful of it. And
Right.
that's why we are where we are now.
Yeah.
That's why you can have people voting for somebody they knew was going to get rid of DEI.
Sure.
How do you get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Those are now pejorative terms.
Right.
they voted for somebody who did that. He's still got a 47% approval rating
I
after
know.
voting. So I just think that to hunger and thirst for those diverse voices, you're going to have to spend some time in that desert, like Jesus in the 40 days, because there will be a dearth of those, because y'all have to figure it out for yourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I have to check myself there.
Well, no, I mean, I don't know that you have to check. I mean, you've been in the work and your heart is in the right place and you get it. But, it's like the sins of the fathers visited on the sons. Like
Yeah.
for example, I have this friend, she's white and she's Canadian. And she'll always say things like, talk about white people, this, that, and the other, they. And I want so badly to say to her, excuse me, why do they? Like, that you're not on this team. You're not on my team. You can be, you can offer water to the other team as a thing of hospitality, right? But
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that you're on my team. You can't wear my uniform. You're not on my team. I've never said that to this person because I don't think this person could hear it.
Yeah.
And I think that, you say you have to check yourself only insofar as always remember your team. Again, I am this liminal person.
Yeah.
I wrote about this past the other day, last week. It's a week ago now.
Hmm.
Where I wrote about my grandfather who had a farm in Nebraska.
Hmm.
And I have a picture somewhere of him in his overalls standing in front of his tractor. And he lost the farm during the Depression. And when he was in the process of losing it, the Ku Klux Klan came calling and to recruit. And they talked to these farmers and they said, it's the Negras, it's the Jews, it's the this, the that. And my grandfather heard what they had to say, and his tribe was other farmers, and his allegiance was to them and to the land. So he thought long and hard. He considered what their offer was. He did not accept it in the
Yeah.
end, but he considered it. And I think that this is I epigenetically, his blood runs through my veins,
Yeah.
which is why I do the work that I do.
Yeah.
But for white people, um, yeah, talk to your tribe, talk amongst yourselves. That's what I
Yeah.
always say. I'll throw
Yeah. Of
things out
course.
and then talk amongst you. Don't come. Like I've had people come to my channel and they've said things like, "Can you explain to me? I don't get this at all. Why would Black people vote for Trump?"
Yeah. I remember you talking about
And I'm
this.
like,
Your
the back. Why don't you ask your brother? Ask Mr. Jeff. Why are you asking
right.
me? Ask them why they voted the way they voted.
Right.
Because, this is like a thought experiment. This is it's a way to stay anesthetized and put the onus on those few Black people who voted a certain way. All I know is 92% of Black women understood the assignment. The
Yeah.
question is that you need to be asking yourselves is, what happened? Did you all get the same assignment? Because what happened?
Right.
Y'all got an F.
Right. Why would white people vote against their own interest? I mean,
Yeah, that's it. And
it's the
so,
same.
a lot of people completely got where I was going, but there was a segment of my viewership
Yeah.
that took offense at what I said. They thought it was unkind or mean. Well, I want people to know part of my being a teacher and a healer is letting people know where my line in the sand is.
Yeah.
I have a right to have lines, and
Yeah.
I'm not your Black whisperer. That's not my
Right.
job.
Well, it's also just, yeah, it's just truth telling too, right?
Well, people have a hard
Truth
time.
telling. I know, but it's white fragility. It's
Yes,
also just in general the fear of the shadow.
that's right.
I mean, shadow work is hard. Whether whether you're doing it on yourself personally or collectively, right?
And it's the
And
same.
and some,
It's the
and
same.
some
The
people by
personal is
huh?
political.
Yeah.
It's the
And some
same.
people
Yeah.
yeah, and some people by virtue of the color of their skin, have to, you're they're living in that shadow because it is happening in real time, right? The unconscious and overt effects of that untransmuted, unprocessed, unhealed shadow. But yeah, shadow work and on a
The best
collective
part for
level.
me is the best part about this whole experience that we're experiencing now. There is a good thing for me, and you may have seen me talk about this. I have always felt as a Black person that I lived in a fun house. You ever heard me talk about the fun house analogy? The fun house
I
analogy,
think I heard you talk about that the other
yes,
day.
which
I really
dictates
liked
that
it.
we all pledge allegiance to the flag and mom, apple pie, Chevrolet,
Yeah, yeah,
all of that. And we're true blue Americans and we get teared up when we hear, and yet things are the way they are. And
yeah,
if you stop and you call attention to it, it's like there's a glitch in the matrix. Like
yeah,
the robot doesn't work, So we're in a fun house and we have to act like we like it. And what I love now is that more and more people are saying, wait a minute,
yeah,
these errors are distorted. I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
I can't get from point A to point B without getting dizzy. This is what it's like for Black people. It's very dangerous for us
yeah,
to speak too much truth to power. And that's why, for example, I talk a lot about friendship between Black women and white women. And I have on Sundays, I do a thing called Sunday Conversations. And I've had men on, but I've had also a lot of women on and talk about this. Do you know Lena Rodriguez's work?
no,
She's okay. She's her channel is called Tarot Down Under. She's an Australian, and she does also political tarot, and talks a lot about the U.S. And she was the first big name that I reached out to, and I said, do you want to come? You want to do a thing together? Well,
yeah,
now we do a thing monthly. She comes on my channel, and we talk monthly about the country and also the state of the world. And
right.
why did I bring her up? Oh, sort of
Something about being in the fun house.
Mhm. Well,
House.
the fact that
The glitch in the system.
I think that there's been this glitch, and what I like is that people don't like feeling the glitch. They don't understand it.
No.
They don't get it. They'll say things like, "This is not the country that I know," or you'll have somebody like Kamala Harris say, "This is not who we are." I'm like, "Excuse me, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. This is exactly who we are."
There you go.
This is exactly, and I love the fact that there's no hiding, there's no denying,
Yeah.
there's no going under the covers about
No
that.
spiritual bypassing.
Exactly.
Right. Because, this to me is really important because, again, traveling in kind of metaphysical New Age spiritual circles, and I'm sure it exists in every religion, there, that idea that somehow we can be focused on transcendence and
Yeah, 5D, here we come.
yeah, the 5D, we can ascend and we don't need to be engaged with these things, and particularly white people like to say they like to go to unity consciousness, and why do we have to focus on the differences in cultures and races? Let's be all about unity. And the thing is that, as Marianne Weston said when I asked her about the spiritual, this issue, it's kind of like, yeah, but you incarnated in a physical body,
That's right.
right?
Right.
And you incarnated in the world you incarnated in that has this particular glitch in the system. And so, like, what about that? So, like, you're
Well, you know
supposed
what? I know astrologers. I have a good friend, she's an
yeah,
astrologer. And she says, so when I first started my channel, and I love this person, I've known them like 10 years.
yeah,
They've readings for me that have been amazing, white woman. So when I first started my channel, she said, okay, Eric, I'm going to give you some advice. You have to be neutral. And I'm like, what? She goes,
Yeah.
yeah, you have to be neutral. If you're going to be a pure channel for this information, you have to be neutral. So I said, okay, thank you. So then I started my channel and I'm doing what I'm doing. And so she watched the video and she said, well, I have one critique. You have too much overhead space. Like I had my camera like that. So she said, put your
Mhm.
camera down so that you don't
Right.
have that. I said, okay, anything else? She goes, no, keep doing what you're doing because her perspective was this. It was kind of the bypassy type of thing. If you're going to be a clear channel, you have to understand that you are not in the matrix. You are
Right.
watching the action, like you're at the right hand of God, right? And
Right.
you're watching all of the action. You're not attached, so you can then deliver the information. But I'm with Marianne. Last time I checked, we were all born. We were all
Yeah.
We're, we are on the game. We are pieces in the game. Now,
Yeah.
by the way, that's not to say that as pieces on the game board, we can't have consciousness. Like we might say, wait a minute, I've played this role in this game. I don't want to play this role in this game.
Right.
I want to let all the other pawns know that we've been pawns in this game. Let's
Yeah.
flip the script on this game. But when you have that other view, that bypassing view, it's as though you don't have that kind of control.
Right.
But we
Yeah.
do. The only way you can have it though is to be on the board.
Yeah. And it's on the board where we ostensibly chose to come to have that experience to not only evolve personally, but to help us, in the communities, the families we're born into, the communities we're born into, the cultures, the even the nations, and then collectively to evolve.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it isn't either or. I always call it the two truths.
Hmm.
Like the one truth is things as they are.
Hmm.
The bare, naked, sometimes difficult truth, right? Which has the shadow, right? And then there's the truth of like, as in terms of on a soul level, both individually
Right,
and collectively, what are the roles we volunteered to be in and why, and what's the
right.
bigger picture and the bigger meaning and purpose and all that. But
But
you
this
can't.
planet, to be incarnated in this planet,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, this planet is we chose to come to
Yeah.
is incredibly heavy and dense. We have to suck in air in order to live.
Yeah.
We have to ingest things in order to live. We have to
Yeah.
excrete things. We need to drink. We have to be in relationship with people. We get sick. We have fears. All of those things are really dense and heavy and only can happen in a body. But it's also a gift to be in a body
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's how we connect with each other. It's how we can speak to each other's souls through touch, through words, through
Yeah.
music, through art, through all of those things.
Yeah.
So we are both and, like you say.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you can't abdicate your role as one because the other sounds so much easier.
Yeah.
That's fragility. We all would love the easy.
Yeah. The
That's
easy.
not why we came here.
Yeah. 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 But yeah. So anyway. So yeah. So I think that's, and I think that, and obviously you hold the same view that, the shadow work it is the spiritual work.
That's right.
And in some ways it's, I went to, I sat with Buddhist teacher Jack Kornfield,
Oh,
and
sure.
it struck me. He said this one thing, which I think is beautiful. He said, there are three, there are three, three paths to enlightenment. The one is the path of excuse me, of ecstasy, right?
Mhm.
The other is the path of hard work.
Mhm.
The other is the path of suffering.
Mhm.
Now, frankly, I've probably done all three, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
hard work and suffering, but it is a path. It is a spiritual path, right? And yeah, and there's just and I'll speak for white people because I am white. I'll speak for myself personally, but also, just having taught a lot of classes with on racism, they're dominantly white. Is that God? White people, we have it so easy, and I mean, we have suffering. Everybody has suffering, but it's
You have it easy, except for one thing.
yeah.
It's at the cost of your souls.
Oh well, yes,
And as Tracy Chapman sings, all that you have is your soul.
right. And we could call that karma.
Mhm.
Right, we could call that karma. But anyway, well, you know what? We have, I mean, boy,
No, an hour and a half.
I know, I'm so sorry, but I
This was
just,
good.
you have so much. I mean, like we had part one and part two, and part
Yeah.
one was all your story and your teaching about Lenormand and working and how you came to it, and that's just rich. And I think part two was the kind of like spirituality in action to heal the world, and I just love the conversation on both sides. Living myself on both sides. So, I mean, is there anything last that you want to share?
I I appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation.
Yeah,
Speaking of opportunity, I hope that we all see this time as a time of opportunity. I don't think a lot of people are looking at it that way, but it really is. Uh,
it is.
it's an opportunity to step outside the funhouse, to take a sledgehammer to the funhouse,
Yeah.
and construct something that is much more, um, life affirming,
Mhm.
and true and real.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just hope that these horrible things that are being done, in particular, to people of color in this country, immigrants being deported to CCOT, for God's sake,
Think it's going to have to get considerably
work.
worse. And I
Yes.
think that people are going to have to feel it in a very personal way. So, for example, you're
Yes.
a farmer and your immigrant the workforce is not there. And so your crops wither on the vine and you can't, or in the field, and you don't make money. And then that trickles down to people going to the store and not
Yeah.
being able to find produce, et cetera. People are that way. We have, I talk a lot or mention a lot the book Sapien. We are primates, and the thing is that uh, that means we have a good angel on our side and a not so good angel on our side, and we
Yeah.
are constantly being tugged by our basest instincts.
Yeah.
And until this touches some of our base needs, we will not see the benefit of changing the system. Because one of the things I wrote about this in my Substack, my most recent Substack was about empathy and the fact that there have been four studies in the past, I don't know, decade and a half that
Mm.
indicate that white people do
Yeah.
not have the same level of empathy as other people do. And of course not, because how could you enslave a population if you had
Yeah.
empathy for their humanity, right? So, um,
Yeah.
I
It's a deep
think that
soul
it will,
loss. It's a deep
right,
soul loss.
it's a deep
Yeah.
soul loss. So until enough people feel that, and the problem is because all of us are coming from the same source, we are all one. Those of us who already get it have to kind of sit and wait and pray and hope that everybody else catches up. Because so long as there are people who have not caught up, none of us will be where we need to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
It
think
has
the
to be.
suffering is going to have to hit a critical level.
Yeah. And the suffering it's also got to be when when white people begin to be targeted and
And they
deported.
feel it personally. That's
They
right.
feel it personally. And it is going to happen. It's already begun to happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, we could go on and on.
Go on, yes.
Okay, but what I want to say is, Erica's, I've been playing with her cards because I just love her cards, and I have small hands, and I hate card decks that are so big I can't shuffle them. But these are really.
Lenormand is traditionally smaller than tarot. These are actually a little larger than the traditional Lenormand deck, but it's always going to be smaller than a tarot card. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just, I just kept holding it while you were talking because I just love these cards. And so Erica's Lenormand of Hope. I know that's backwards. I think it's backwards.
Oh, it actually shows up the right way.
Does it? Okay, it's showing up backwards for me. And her book, a little primer. You can find Erika on her YouTube channel at In the Company of Cards.
Just like
and then you have a website, which is, you want to say what it is?
Lenormand with Erika at gmail.com is my email. But
okay.
Yeah, the website, what is the website? It's the same thing, lenormandwitherika.com.
Yeah, and this is all below the video.
Yes.
If you're watching it in YouTube, and it's also in the podcast information. And I believe you are still giving individual readings. I see.
I'm starting to wind those down just because there's so many requests.
I know.
I set aside a certain number a month and just go from there. Sometimes I do it free. Did you know that?
No. Good. Yeah, nice of you. Yeah.
Whenever I hit a milestone on YouTube, I will go on for an hour or two sometimes and do free 5-card readings. Yeah.
Wonderful. So anyway, find Erika, watch her. As I said, ever since I learned about her from Marianne Weston, I now watch Erika's YouTube, and I'm going to dig into her Substack now that I realize there's a Substack. I'm like, oh my God, there's more. Yay. Okay. Thank you so much, Erika. This has been so delightful, so illuminating. Thank you to all my viewers and listeners. It is really rich when you tune in, and I appreciate you spreading the word, subscribing, because the more we get the word out about how we can do the deep inner work of healing the shadow dimensions of within us and within our communities and families and the world, the sooner we will manifest a new world of empathy, compassion, and a greater peace. So thank you to everybody. Thank you. Hug, hug. Mwah, mwah. Bye.